Have you ever wondered what happens when two brilliant minds meet over a beaker of glowing mystery? Today we'll unravel the love story of Pierre and Marie Curie, a partnership born in a cramped Paris lab, forged through grinding pitchblende ore by hand, crowned by Nobel Prizes, and tested by heartbreak. In the next few minutes, we'll explore how their devotion to each other fueled scientific breakthroughs still shaping our world. Ready? Let's dive in. Let me take you deeper into the world of Pierre and Marie Curie, the intricacies of their partnership, the small moments that defined them, the challenges they overcame, and the legacy they built together and apart. Picture this as a conversation between friends as you listen. No formal sections or labels, just a flowing story that feels alive. Imagine Marie Sklodowska arriving in Paris in late 1891. She's 24, leaving behind Warsaw's familiar streets, driven by a hunger for knowledge she nourished in secret at the Flying University. She speaks little French at first, scrapes together tuition and living expenses by tutoring, and shares a tiny attic room where evenings often find her by lamplight poring over textbooks. Meanwhile, Pierre Curie, 8 years her senior, is already known among Parisian physicists for his meticulous studies of magnetism and crystals. He enjoys a modest but stable life, a small apartment, a comfortable routine in the Sorbonne lab, and weekends cycling around Paris. Their meeting in spring 1894 wasn't orchestrated by fate in a grand salon, but happened quietly in the Sorbonne corridors. A colleague introduced them, and Marie later described glimpsing Pierre through a window, his expression calm yet intense, the kind of seriousness that spoke of deep focus. They began sharing lab time. Marie needed to borrow a sensitive electrometer for her work on measuring faint radiation. Pierre saw her determination and offered guidance. From lending equipment to trading notes over coffee at a nearby cafe, their professional respect blossomed into friendship. One anecdote tells of Marie, shivering in the chilly lab, receiving a gentle coat from Pierre, small kindnesses that hinted at something more. By the end of 1894, Pierre proposed marriage. Marie hesitated. She was attached to her Polish identity, aware that marriage might tether her to expectations she wasn't sure she wanted. She returned to Warsaw briefly, corresponding with Pierre in letters that mixed scientific details with personal warmth. He wrote about his excitement when she described a new experimental method. She wrote about longing to discuss data with someone who truly understood. His words convinced her. Partnership in life and science felt worth the leap. On July 26, 1895, they wed in Sceaux. Marie chose a dark blue dress practical enough for future lab wear. Pierre wore a simple suit. Their honeymoon wasn't a lavish trip, but a cycling tour through Brittany and the Auvergne, stopping in small inns, talking about experiments and dreams, savoring freedom together. Back in Paris, they set up in a cramped shed behind the School of Physics and Chemistry. There was no running water, barely any heating, and poor ventilation, what they later, jokingly called the miserable hut. They piled pitchblende ore in barrels and spent hours grinding it by hand on a cast-iron mortar, then dissolving and precipitating chemicals to isolate radioactive materials. Just imagine them side by side at a rickety table, hands stained, breaths visible in the cold air, their eyes lighting up whenever a measurement hinted at something new. In July of 1898, they announced polonium, naming it for Marie's beloved Poland, and by December of that same year, after months of relentless work, they finally isolated radium. Friends described how Marie's eyes shone when she held a vial that faintly glowed, Pierre gently guiding her to confirm the readings. Their notebooks from those days are cramped yet precise, full of calculations scribbled next to tiny sketches of apparatus, and on the margins, sometimes a note of concern, a reminder to rest or a comment on how Marie seemed tired. During this intense period, life and research became, completely intertwined. Their first daughter, Irene, was born on September 12, 1897, right between those early experiments. Pierre's father moved into their modest apartment to help with childcare, so Marie could return to the lab a bit sooner. There's a really touching letter from Marie to a friend, describing how she balanced feeding Irene in the morning, then rushed off to measure samples in the afternoon, always with Pierre checking in, asking if she'd eaten, reminding her to wear warmer clothes, or sharing an observation about the latest results. Weekends might include a bicycle ride with Irene perched in a wicker seat, a picnic where they discussed new theoretical ideas, or evenings where they read aloud to each other, sometimes scientific articles, sometimes poetry, seamlessly blending research and romance. In 1903, Marie defended her doctoral thesis on December 25th, becoming the first woman in France to earn a doctorate in physics. That same year, they, along with Henri Becquerel, received the Nobel Prize in Physics on December 10th for their work on radioactivity. There's a charming detail. Marie insisted Pierre's name appear first in the announcement, insisting his contributions deserved equal spotlight, even though convention might have listed her first as the discoverer of new elements. In Stockholm, they stood together, sharing a humble pride. Reports say Marie wore a modest dress but carried herself with quiet confidence. Pierre's pride in her was evident in his gaze. Yet fame brought new pressures. Journalists curious about their private life, rumors swirling about the hazards of their experiments, though they barely understood the long-term risks of radiation, and invitations to lecture across Europe, meaning time away from lab and family. Their second daughter, Eve, was born December 6, 1904. By then, the lab was more established, yet still demanding. Evening routines might involve Marie soothing Eve to sleep in a cradle by the window, while Pierre reviewed data at the desk nearby. Friends recalled dinner conversations about experimental setbacks or theoretical puzzles, punctuated by laughter when Irene interrupted to ask for stories. They celebrated small milestones together, a successful separation of a radium compound, or a letter from a colleague praising their methodology. But along with joy, there were signs of strain fatigue from endless hours in poorly ventilated rooms, occasional illnesses they didn't link to radiation exposure, and the emotional weight of public expectations. Then, on April 19, 1906, everything changed. Pierre, walking home on a rainy afternoon, was struck by a horse-drawn cart on Rue Dauphine and died instantly. Marie, pregnant with their third child, learned the news in shock. Grief engulfed her. Accounts describe her falling into deep sorrow, yet amidst despair, she resolved to continue the work they began together. Within months, on November 5, 1906, she assumed Pierre's teaching position at the Sorbonne, becoming the first woman professor there. Picture her stepping into his lecture hall, students murmuring in surprise, Marie standing at the podium, a mixture of grief and determination in her eyes. She balanced lectures with lab work and caring for Irene, aged 8, and Eve, nearly 2, and soon welcomed their third child, Eve's baby brother or sister, though sadly that child did not survive long after birth. Friends supported her, but much of the burden was hers, preparing lectures during late-night hours, reviewing research notes they had shared, and, crucially, safeguarding their joint legacy. Her solo achievements were extraordinary. On December 10, 1911, she received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for isolating pure radium. It was the first time someone won Nobels in 2 different sciences. Imagine Marie standing once more in Stockholm, carrying memories of Pierre and the miserable hut, honored for work they began together. She founded the Radium Institute in 1914, attracting students from across Europe, many women inspired by her path. When World War I broke out, she spearheaded mobile X-ray units, Petites Curies, driving them near front lines to help doctors diagnose injuries. Anecdotes tell of Marie personally training drivers and nurses, sketching diagrams of X-ray apparatus in muddy fields, and comforting wounded soldiers who marveled that a woman scientist had come to aid them. Throughout, she faced controversies. In 1911, revelations of an affair with Paul Langevin led to harsh media scrutiny. Papers attacked her morality, yet Pierre's earlier respect for her intellect seemed to guide her resilience. She remained focused on research and her daughters, refusing to let scandal derail her mission.
As years passed, health issues emerged. Marie began experiencing symptoms later linked to radiation exposure, fatigue, anemia. But she persisted, mentoring a generation of researchers, publishing papers, advising emerging scientists. On July 4, 1934, she passed away from aplastic anemia in her Paris home. The city mourned, crowds gathered outside her residence, flowers piled up for the woman who had illuminated invisible forces. In 1995, both Marie and Pierre were interred in the Pantheon, joining France's greatest figures, a posthumous recognition of the partnership that reshaped science and symbolized enduring love. What can we take from this? Their story shows how shared passion can fuel both romance and world-changing work. It reminds us that love isn't just candlelit dinners but also the sweat of grinding ore, the exchange of ideas on cold nights, the unwavering support when tragedy strikes. Marie's courage after Pierre's death speaks to the transformative power of purpose aligned with love. They teach us that collaboration, rooted in mutual respect, humility, and shared vision, can achieve leaps no individual alone could manage. When you think of your own partnerships, creative projects, relationships, teamwork, consider how the Curies exemplify resilience, curiosity, and devotion intertwined at /. And that, my friends, is the story of Pierre and Marie Curie, a love that wasn't just about romance, but about resilience, respect, and a shared vision that changed the world. Their partnership shows us that love can be quiet and steady, forged in late nights and hard work, not just grand gestures. And that sometimes, the most powerful way to love someone is to believe in their mind, their purpose, and walk beside them even when the path is uncertain. If their story moved you, if it sparked your curiosity or made you see love and ambition in a new light, don't forget to give this video a like /. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful true stories where history, heart, and humanity collide. And hey, drop a comment below, what part of their journey struck you the most? Was it their tireless lab work? Marie's courage after Pierre's death? Or the way they made family and science coexist? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay passionate, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the greatest love stories don't end in fairy tales, they end in legacy.